So I also want to leave you for a few tips of how to bring this into practice. First off, create your theory of change together. This should not be something that someone creates alone in a room and puts together in a logical model for the donor. This should be something that is created in a collaborative way, just like the product or the service is created in a collaborative way. You want to answer these questions. What will the participants take away? What will they do next? And how will those actions change the community, the society, the industry, the world? Now, those questions can be answered together in a few different ways. If you are all in the same place, you can do this in an in-person workshop. If you're all in different places, you can do it remotely through a survey, having individuals weigh in on these questions and then compiling their answers, or you can use a combination. But I definitely encourage you to be as collaborative as possible when defining the success and defining the theory of change for your participatory design intervention. Second, use that theory of change to define your metrics. Once you've laid out the concepts that are important to you and what success means to you, it becomes easier to say, oh, how would I quantify that? What are the metrics that would correspond to that concept? Afterward, you can actually cross-reference your thoughts and concepts and metrics with more standardized metrics. And in the reference section, you can see some places where you can find more standard metrics to compare to. But I would say this is the right order to do it in. Don't go first to the online catalogs of metrics and then get distracted by all of the hundreds and thousands of things you could measure. Start with what matters to you, and then cross-reference with the standard metrics that are out there that can give you inspiration. Third, decide how to capture those metrics. There's a lot to consider here, especially in the context of doing participatory design, in terms of how you're going to get information and the best quality information in the most efficient way and also the most respectful way. You have to answer questions like, who is going to collect this information? When and with what frequency? Using what tool? Is a survey more appropriate in this setting? Is it an interview? In context by context, there's going to be different factors around literacy, language, culture, and connectivity that will determine the medium that you use to collect this information. And you also have to keep in mind biases. So for example, if you're the one delivering the workshop and you're also the one collecting the information, participants may feel uncomfortable expressing negative feedback to you, or they may want to over-exaggerate the positive impacts of your intervention because they like you and they want to make you feel happy. So you always have to consider who is actually collecting this information in order to minimize bias. You can find more tips in the PDF. And finally, this is my biggest mantra in the realm of monitoring and evaluation in general, but don't collect anything you won't use. Our industry suffers from an over-collection problem where we think, oh, it would be nice to know this and that, and all of a sudden we have a list of 1,000 indicators we want to collect. It's expensive to collect information. It's burdensome to participants to collect a ton of information from them. So if you're going to ask a question or collect a piece of information, make sure you have in mind a use for that information and that it's really informing the core of what you're trying to do, and that it's not just kind of excess information that will sit in a folder somewhere and never get used. There are more tips, as I said, in the PDF, and we'll talk more about the process of designing and implementing an M&E system in the discussion section. So just to recap what we've talked about today in measuring the impact of participatory design. First, we've talked about the different types of impact pathways in participatory design: the product pathway and the process pathway. Both are important. Second, you've learned how D-Lab tracks the impact of the International Development Design Summits, and hopefully that gave you some inspiration of the types of tools and strategies you might use to measure the impact of your own participatory design innovation. And third, we learned about the concept of a theory of change and how to use that tool to plan for the measurement of your intervention. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the discussion.